Linda Groman. Welcome to Nature of Reality Radio, and thank you, Daniel Teague, for recommending you. It's great to be back on the air. I did a show with Donnie Gilson a couple days ago, which was my first show in about 4 weeks. After all the hell that happened to me, I ended up getting 302'd by the police after some entities toyed with my mind when I was walking down the street on a nature walk. Spent 5 days in a psych ward. That was an experience to remember. I'm glad I got out of that, and there was also a power failure. It caused a power outage for 3 days, and I also had to deal with a guest telling me that after the interview, please don't upload to YouTube. I thought we were only going to talk about one subject, and I don't feel comfortable talking about all the other subjects. And after all that hell finally went through, I finally get to start doing shows regularly again. And from this interview onward, I am going to be uploading to both YouTube, which I unfortunately cannot monetize anymore. They have demonetized me. Donations would be nice. You can always listeners always click on the donate button on the natureofrealityradio.blogspot.com, where I archive all my shows. And but from now on, I will also be uploading to cost.tv. I will only be able to do 1 hour interviews, or if I do a 2 hour interview, I'm going to have to do it in 2 parts because they only allow for 1 hour maximum. And I guess I'll mostly say this at the end of the interviews too. But all my listeners, I'd rather you listen on cost.tv so I can monetize, but still listen maybe for 15 seconds on the YouTube channel, just so I can get credit for a view, because YouTube is one of the best mediums, of course, to get info out. So I'm not going to, as long as I can be on there, I'm going to stay on there, even if they demonetize me. So now that I've gotten all of that out of the way, Linda Groman, gentledovewellness.com is your website. And I see you, the flower of life seems to be very prominent with your what you do and some other things. I'll use this site as a guide throughout the course of the program, and what the dove too. There's a lot of things about the dove, and David Icke fans would have a field day talking about how the Illuminati uses the dove for things, and how Columbus, he was a despicable man and not the founder of America that we're led to believe he was. But that's a whole other story and a whole new can of worms. But the important thing is, first of all, who you are, what you experienced in your life, and what caused you to do the stuff that you do. Linda Groman, why don't you tell your life story from a primary source perspective to get us acquainted? Those that aren't familiar with you, you got the floor. I will put myself on mute and shut up and let you talk.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Wow. Well, let's see, pretty much a mogul most of my life. People understand that reference from Harry Potter. I was approximately 50 years old when I woke up. And it was quite the experience in life that brought that about, because to shift from where I was so quickly was amazing. And but it took a life-changing episode. And I think that happens to some people. Some of us walk around totally oblivious, and then something incredible, not always feels good at times. I mean, it can be losing a spouse is not a good thing to have happen to you at the age of 46. But, you know, these things happen for a reason. So, and I do believe, but I understand that now, that, you know, my spouse was with me for 30 years. And I met him when I was 16. So at the age of 46, it was kind of devastating, because he was my whole world, you know. Best friend, you know, not just my husband. And he had a very difficult passing. He had a rare disorder, neurological disorder, which had there was no hope, because there was no research, no funding, nothing. It was what is going to be is what it's going to be. So pretty much I knew he would live for about 6 years in a very terrible state. And I tell people it was one of those things where, you know, you can't imagine what it's like to go through until you go through it. But being the caregiver primarily really changed my life, because I felt so disempowered through that whole process, dealing with the medical profession and trying to help him as best I could. and be his advocate. I did a lot of, studying on the disease and the brain and trying to understand what the doctors were saying, etc., so I could do what I could do best. But, at the end, it was a blessing when he left, but it was a very difficult time for me because it was a life crisis. I literally sat with myself afterwards, after all the, hubbub's over, everybody leaves, you're by yourself. And I just sat there and start talking to God. I didn't know what else to do. And you have to understand, I'm not a religious person per se. I really never belonged. I mean, I was, I guess, a quasi-Christian. I don't know what you would call me, because I was baptized as a baby, and that was pretty much my exposure, except for being a young child and trying to find God in church and never finding it. So I was very spiritual. I always had a very deep connection. I felt directly with, I call God, source, energy, whatever you want to refer to it, whatever comfort level people have. But I've always known about it. So, but I had gotten kind of lost in the sauce through all this, through life. And so I started to go back there, and I started to want to learn to meditate. To meditate. So I had no teachers. I taught myself, which was an interesting thing to do. But using one tape, and it was a cassette back then, because that's how long ago it was. We're talking 2000, 2001. I just basically taught myself how to meditate, and I went very deeply. What I have found is meditation is that when you really go inward like that so deeply on a regular basis, that your expansion, your consciousness expands tremendously. And I had no idea what to expect. I didn't see it coming, but I started having, these visions, and I started having these experiences where I just knew things. I didn't know why I knew them. I just knew. I knew where I had to go. I knew what I had to do. Without any logic or brain function involved, this was totally, an intuitive process for me. And that's basically how I was led to take Reiki. That's where it all started initially. I had these synchronicities happening, and all of a sudden I'm connecting, and somebody is telling me about this center, and I feel very drawn to go. I sit in a very short introduction to Reiki, and I just knew before I left. I was in there 15 minutes. I just knew at that moment, this is what I'm supposed to study. Signed up for the class right then and there, which is, you have to understand, is very bizarre for me as a person, because of the fact that all of my life prior had been all logical, left brain work. Okay, so now I'm shifting and using the right brain and trusting it, and very new experience for me. So, but I have learned through all of this that that's what I need to trust. When I trust my mind tends to put me in too much fear, and it blocks me. So I went to the class, and I had the most remarkable experience. I mean, my God, in one day, in one class, I had a complete shift of my belief system. I had no belief in energy work, no belief in any of the spiritual stuff that I saw on the television. This all to me was a bunch of hogwash. I did believe in the afterlife, but beyond that, that's about as far as you could take me. So when I was in the class, the Reiki master teacher had each of the students join into a guided meditation before the process of what they call attunement, which is how they shift your energy so that you can work with Reiki. And it's a beautiful spiritual practice that they do. But I didn't know what an attunement was, and I kind of went into fear the first moment I heard it, because I didn't understand it. And what you don't understand, you fear. So the guided meditation became the bridge for me to go forward. Because when I was in that meditation, I had the most remarkable experience. I will never forget it the rest of my life. I can recall it in a moment, and I can feel what I felt in that moment. And in that moment, it was very beautiful. It was so full of love and so full of acceptance and gratitude for me to be there. I literally felt this being, this energy, approach me energetically as I'm in this meditation. And the feeling that I felt was this energy of love, beautiful unconditional love, and which I have never felt in my life. You know, it's hard to feel unconditional love in this earth, you know. So many people judge, so many people expect things from you. But this unconditional love, literally, this being, this energy came to me and then completely enveloped me in this energy. I felt as if he had taken his wings or a cloak and just enveloped me in it, which was so moving. And so, but the next thing that happened was that I heard these words in my inner ear, my inner, you know, hearing, clairaudiently. And it was just simple, just, you finally got here. And I lost it at that moment. I truly lost it. I was crying. I could feel the tears running down my face. And after that, we went through the attunement process and I started to practice. And when we started doing the practice is when I was just flabbergasted by what I was feeling, what I was experiencing. I could feel this heat coming through me. I could feel the tingling through all of my energy system. And that was day one of the class. And it was really funny because the teacher said to us, go home, everyone, at the end of class, and please don't, you know, don't go shopping, just go home, rest, take it easy. We were coming back the next day for part two. Well, I did. I went home. I didn't go anywhere. I just simply went. I started working on my computer when I got home. And within 5 minutes, I realized that I was so exhausted. I was so drained that I had to go to bed. And it was probably 7 o'clock at night. It just literally, because of that, what it does is that energy, when it is trying to realign, clean, and clear you, it has a lot of work to do. So it wants you to sleep. It wants you to rest. So the next day, you know, we completed the second day, and it changed my life from that point forward. And it was really hard because people, you know, around me who knew me didn't really understand. And Reiki wasn't very known. It was there, but by the general populace, it really wasn't acceptable to a lot of people that I knew. So it was very challenging. I lost some people, lost some friends over it. But energetically, I understand now that that can happen because of the fact that, you know, we're talking about, I'm raising my vibrational energy and they're down at this other level, and we just can't be in the same space. It's the law of attraction. So that took some getting used to, considering I had just lost my spouse and now I'm losing friends, you know. And at one point I even got angry about that. And I think that's a normal human reaction for your life changing in ways that you don't understand and you really don't know if you feel comfortable with. And that was like, kind of had a talk with God and was like, I don't know if I want to do this, you know. And so I had to come to terms with my path. And I think that's hard on some people because we, you know, unfortunately, we've chose this before we came here, but we don't know. We have amnesia. So we have to rediscover what our path is. And part of what then began to happen is it opened me up so much that I started investigating more and more and more. I became an insatiable reader. I would get 4 or 5 books at a time and read them all simultaneously. I would just, pick up and read this chapter. I couldn't just sit down with one book. I was just trying to get so much information so fast. But eventually, I found out that my Reiki master was also a master instructor for with an energy called integrated energy therapy, which a lot of people may or may not have heard of it. It's not as known as Reiki. It started coming out. It was developed and was taught out in, I think, the mid-90s. The gentleman who founded it is actually from Woodstock, New York, and he was previously to getting into energy work was a Bell Labs engineer. So very interesting story there. But I got an interest in, and I took the introduction workshop for the integrated energy therapy. Not long after, probably about a year after I was doing Reiki, because I wanted to see what else was out there. So it was interesting because I went to this little workshop where all they did was have us do a beautiful meditation that's basically, now I understand, is the basis of all the healing work that is done in the integrated energy therapy. And it was called the Angelic Heart Link meditation. And it's a very basic, very easy, anybody can do it anytime. You don't have to have any kind of attunement to do this. And you just sit quietly and you envision this beautiful golden cord of energy that comes from your heart center, because up your upper chakras, up through the throat, the third eye, the crown, all the way up. And you are imagining that you're connecting to the heart of an angel. Doesn't matter what angel, which one you prefer, it really doesn't matter. And when you do that, you're also then begin sending love and gratitude in prayer form to the angel. And after a few moments of this, sending this energy up through this cord to your angel, the angel begins the process of sending it back down. And this is where the magic is, because when they start sending that energy back down, it's tenfold, it's 10 times the strength of the love that you sent up. It's very, unbelievable. And it literally fills your whole heart area. It flows out your arms, okay? And with this energy, you can actually do things what we call heart links, and we can send them to loved ones. We can send them to people either here on the earth or people who have passed, just from that process. It's an amazing process to help others. But what was interesting was, because I had been doing very deep, intense meditation, my expectations were, I guess, very high about what I would see or experience or hear. And I felt rather let down. I was scratching my head. I thought, well, it was lovely, but I didn't think anything had happened that was remarkable. So I left and I got in my vehicle to go home, and I had about a 10 to 15 minute drive to get to my house. And I don't think I made it halfway before I started having something happen, which really blew my mind. I didn't understand it. It's totally illogical. I literally had tears coming out of my eyes. They were rolling down my face, but I wasn't sad. I had no emotional connection to these tears. I've never had that happen. So I was rather curious as to what was going on, but I really didn't know. So I went home, got ready for bed, and it went on for about an hour or so. Finally fell asleep, got up the next morning, and as I woke and got out of bed, I sat on the side of the bed and I noticed very quickly that something had changed with me. I noticed that I felt lighter, and the thought came to me that something happened. Definitely there was some sort of healing that happened through this process, but nobody touched me. So I was amazed, and I thought, I need to understand this more. I need to discover what this is all about. And that's what brought me to integrated energy therapy. Not that I stopped doing Reiki, because Reiki has been my base. And I still have been, and I continued to study different levels of Reiki. When the Karuna Reiki was developed in the 90s, I went and took, I didn't take that class until about 2007, but you have to be a Reiki master teacher to take it. So I had to go through all those levels to get to that point, which I did in 2005. So in 2007, I decided I wanted to make the next step up, which I did. So it's been a progression over time. I didn't know I was going to be a teacher. I really didn't want to be a teacher initially. I did it for helping others, and that was my only concern, was to be of service. But it was interesting because it evolves. So when I teach students these days, it's like I hear that from them, you know, I don't want to teach. And I just smile. I just smile at them because I know eventually the possibility's there if that's their path. So it's very interesting how things have been developing in the energy world as a whole over this time period, because, you know, I felt like I came in, not at the very beginning, but I've been at this for just about 19 years. So I've seen a lot of changes and a lot of growth, and a lot of what's happening is, I think it's evolutionary. I think that as we, as people on this earth, as human beings, have been evolving spiritually, consciously, these energies have been evolving and growing consciously. So it's very interesting to watch this process. So after I did the Karuna, I also then in 2015, I took another class, because the Reiki, the Usui Reiki, which is the traditional, the Reiki that first came to the United States, that was brought here by Mrs. Takata. We had a new energy come through a channel back in late 2014, and that was called Holy Fire. And Holy Fire it's not a religious connotation. It has to do with purity. It has to do with cleansing. And so that energy literally merged and became connected to the Usui Reiki if you were given the proper placements and or what they called ignitions for it. That's something that, you know, I now teach and have, you know, students experience. But I went in August of 2015 to go through that again for 3 full days. I went into Sedona and spent 3 days there with the teachers. An amazing process. And I have been doing Reiki at that point for, you know, 14 years. And so it was an amazing experience for me, because I went into that class and I had an experience which I couldn't understand. And it was a real learning experience for me, because of the fact that when we went day one, they did what they call pre-ignition, which is where we are, as a Reiki master teacher, surrendering over our Usui teaching symbols, which have already been placed within our energy field. We need to release them in order to accept this new energy, okay? And we also had to relinquish temporarily all of our lower guides, because one of the things about Holy Fire is that what you are trying to do is you're trying to move up and deal with higher level guidance. You want to be dealing with guides who are not ego-based, that have no agenda of their own. So you're looking to reconnect to higher guides that would be ascended masters, things of that nature, things that are not ego-driven. So there's a whole shift in your energy when you're doing this. So what happened to me personally, which didn't happen to anybody else in that that class, so it was, really upsetting to me, was that after I did the pre-ignition process, I literally could not feel the Reiki flowing through me for the first time in 15 years. And so that really undid me for a little bit, for about a day. So I had to work through that and just tell the other students and tell the teacher. I had to stand up and say, look, this is what I'm experiencing. Because I didn't want to, because you have a lot of practice between each other, and I just didn't want anyone to not know what I'm experiencing. So they were working with me. So they were very gracious and everything went fine, but I never felt the flow of the new Reiki coming through, this holy fire with the Reiki, until after that class completed. Literally, the day after, I was still in Sedona getting ready to leave. I went to breakfast at the coffee mug, and I was sitting there by myself, very complete, just sitting there thinking about, what I had experienced and wondering what's going on. And in that moment, just sitting there by myself, I literally felt as if there was a pilot light. You know how the old ovens had that pilot light and it would just go whoosh, okay? And that's exactly what it felt like. I sat there and I felt this come through me, and I just sighed a sigh of relief, number one, and so full of gratitude. I just thank God, and I was like, okay. But sometimes that happens with energy work, and people don't understand that, because and it helps me as a teacher, first of all, to understand what anxieties a student might be going through if they have that experience, because I've never had that experience before. So the value of that is very, very high. So it's a very interesting process, because when you start, people think when you become a Reiki master teacher, okay, that you're at your pinnacle. Well, you're not, and I tell people all the time, I could be a Reiki master for 10 years. It doesn't matter. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. It never ends. There is no end. You are constantly going to be going through your lessons and through your life experiences, because this is part of your growth, and until you leave this plane of existence. And I don't even know, we may even do more learning when we get to the other side. I don't know. But I know for me, this is an ongoing. I'm already, here for a long time, and I expect I'm going to be here for a much longer time. But it's very interesting how you see people come into energy work and they're new and so excited. It's wonderful. I love that part of it. I love to see, the glint in their eye when they get it and experience it. But they're in a hurry. They're always in a hurry. And I remember being that person, can't wait, got to get it all now. I want it now, not tomorrow. And so a lot of people go through that process without taking time just to process and to experience and to savor what you have and allow things to flow in its natural course. But anyway, I digress, and I'm going to go into more about IET, because I think it is an amazing healing modality. Most of my clients, if not all at this point, prefer, they come in for Reiki, and Reiki is wonderful. I love Reiki for a lot of things, but people who have been through any kind of trauma, whether it be a trauma that's happened in this life or any of their past lives, that needs to be released, and healed, this is the modality for me and for them. They choose it. A lot of times I'll be working with a client, and they've come in the first time and they've asked for a Reiki session because that's what they understand, and that's what's commonly understood to be healing. They haven't heard about, IET. What happens in a lot of cases is I'm in the middle of a session, and I work with angels in IET. I don't know if I mentioned that. And the angel energy, that love that the angels send through, that's the energy, that is integrated energy, okay? And so what happens is a lot of times, because that's what they need, the angels will come into the room and they're there with me and they are giving me instruction how to help this person. So a lot of my sessions have become hybrid of sorts, you know, and then I have to sit down with my clients afterwards to explain this, because I feel a little awkward about it because they haven't really consented to it. But I feel that if the angels are there and this is what they need, it should be fine. And it always is. And they always then want IET after that. Yeah, I've worked with people, I've worked with breast cancer patients. I've done it I've been a volunteer at the Virginia Piper Cancer Center for over a year when I was out in Arizona. That was an incredible experience, working with the breast cancer patients, which in fact, out of every 10, 9 chose the IET as their healing of choice. And it was funny, because I've started to see a pattern as I've been working with breast cancer survivors, is that they fall into 2 categories. One, and it's just my experience and it may not be totally true, but it is my experience, is that they either have lost a child, okay, or they went through a tremendously horrific, nasty relationship, not totally unloving relationship. And if you think about it, you know, the heart area is the area of our body where this is the area of love. This is the heart. This is when our love is betrayed, or we are in heartache for loss. This is the area we shut down. Okay, it's too painful. So we literally shut it down. We close it off. And so it makes, to me, total logic that this is where we develop disease. Okay, because we are cutting the flow of that energy to the organs in that part of the body. So one of the things that I really want to do going forward is to work with I would love to work with more cancer patients. I find that it is part of what I'm here to do. Okay, in addition to my other pull is to work with a lot of the veterans who have been traumatized over and over and over again, who have what I call, you know, a broken spirit. You know, they need to put the pieces back together, and healing from each of those traumas will do that, so that they can live a fulfilled life and to feel joy again, because they are in such pain, emotional pain. And that's where IET shines the most, because what I love about IET is that you can have a healing, a really incredible healing, and not have experienced one thing. You might think nothing happened, but yet you will also realize later that you had experienced a healing. And we call that healing without feeling. And it happens when the client has had so much trauma and it's too difficult for them to relive it, that the angelics will make sure that they do not experience it, but they will help them release it if it is in their best and highest good to release. So that is why I really do focus a lot on the IET. Now, Reiki can do some of this work, absolutely. I think in a lot of cases it really does work. But to me, I just find that the integrated energy therapy does it faster, just does it faster. And we're working with a high vibrational energy when we're working with the angelics. We are working with an energy ray that's referred to as the angelic violet ray, which is a very high frequency. So it has the ability to really break through a lot of this stuff quickly. And what I love about it is also this, the angels are literally doing, 95, 97% of the work. I'm there, I'm doing what I need to do to help the client, but they are literally taking that energy, because the energy, when it leaves the client, literally goes through my energy system, through my hands, up my arms, up through my chakra system, back up the cord to the angel. The angel transmutes it. So I don't even have to worry about, if I'm have any negative energy in the room. It's literally not going into the room. So it literally goes through me and out through me to them. So what's interesting is, for people who study IET, is that there are there's three levels, okay? Actually, there's four. Three which I can teach, basic, intermediate, and advanced. The next level is master teacher or master instructor, but I am not, as a master instructor, permitted to teach it. That is done by a specific trainer that's allocated from the founder, okay, and from the founding organization. But what's interesting is how it works. When a person takes a basic class, for instance, what they're doing is the energy is manipulating the DNA, okay, in the person. Now, science has already discovered the first pair, which is all about your physical being, okay? But we know, because the angels have told us, that there are 12 strands, 6 pair. The other 5 pair are what we call non-physical DNA, and what the scientists refer to as junk DNA. They don't know what it's for. But actually, it isn't junk. The second pair, the next 2 strands, have everything to do with our emotional body. They have to do, it creates what we call the genetic emotional profile, which will determine our predisposition to how we react to emotional situations. And whether we're a type A or type B person, or whether we're an introvert or extrovert. Not that we can't change these as we grow through life, but this is how we're wired when we come in. Now, what's interesting is that the first and second pair is what is worked on in the basic level. When the student receives the attunement, what happens is that attunement process is aligning and rebalancing and restructuring and expanding those DNA. So when they move on to the intermediate level, we're working on what they call the third pair, which is the mental body. This is what governs the mental body. And this is what controls our genetic mental profile, which determines if we're logical, linear, right brain thinkers, or whether we're artistic and intuitive, right brain. We all have predisposition. Some people can use both sides, but it's rare. Most people are either one or the other. And it also dictates whether you're going to be primarily optimistic or primarily pessimistic as a person. And again, we can change these through time, but this is the way we're coming in with our DNA. So they finished the intermediate and they've had, that pair of the DNA worked on. So that allows them to go further into the work, because the basic level of IET allows us to work only on the emotional body. That's all we're prepared to do. Our DNA has only been restructured for that. When we move up to the intermediate level, we now have the third pair restructured and expanded. So now, not only can we work on the emotional and work at the cellular level to remove what we call the stuck energy that's in the cells and tissues of our body. What's interesting about that whole concept of things getting stuffed in our tissues of our body in the cellular level, is that science is caught up with that now. I mean, there are books out there by PhDs that are talking about this. So this is not just, you know, pie in the sky. There is science behind it. So once you have the third pair worked on and you've got that attunement, you now can not only just work on the body and the emotional, you can now work in the field around the person's aura, the layers. Because what we understand is that, yes, when you have a trauma, you can suppress the trauma because it's too hard to deal with. You can't process, so you stuff it into the cells of your body. It's supposed to be a temporary way station, okay, so that you can process it when you feel safe later on, because you may have been, you know, running for your life, or in a situation where it just wasn't safe to do any processing. But what happens to a lot of people, especially people who are in situations in war or people who are, you know, being abused, there is no safe time to process. So what happens is that energy becomes literally stagnant inside. It loses, it's no longer energized. In order to make it release, at that point, you have to have a stimulus. You have to reactivate that energy. And there's two ways of it happening. And that the first way is that, you know, you have another situation that's similar enough that it will trigger you to activate it. But what usually happens is most people don't understand that's what's going on. So most times what happens is that they just resuppress the next layer and they don't release what was there. So you get layer upon layer upon layer. And what these things do is not only just you're not only just stuffing things in the cells of your body, you are creating what we call thought forms in your energy field. We use a very simple 4-layer because we don't need to get into the individual. I know there are many layers to the aura, but we use a very simple model, 4 layers, which is the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. So, for instance, in the we understand this physical because that's the body itself, and we're talking about the cells of the body. But the body is an energy field, so we need to think about that. Okay, a lot of people don't think about their body as being an energy field. It's just a very dense form of energy which creates matter. So, but we have the emotional field, which is holding all of the connections of the emotions that were felt tied to the experience that was suppressed into your tissues. You go out to your mental field, which is about 2 feet away, approximate from the body, 1 to 2 feet. So that's going to have all of the thought forms that are tied to the thoughts that were created and the beliefs that you established from that experience. Okay, and they're sitting out there in your energy field. So then you go out to the spiritual layer, which is about 3+ feet away, give or take, from your body, and that has what we call imprints. We refer to these thought forms as imprints, energy imprints, and that imprint will have connection to the person's thoughts about spiritual things like God and you know, why did God let this happen to me? You know, I must not be worthy. You know, all kinds of things that can be created from that experience that are spiritually based. So you have all this. Okay. So what's interesting is that Stephen Thayer, who's the founder of this modality, uses a wonderful analogy of, you know, how we have these machines where we would reflect the transparent on, we put it on a glass plate, it would reflect the light, would put it up on a screen. He uses that analogy with these imprints. He says that, you know, imagine that you had 2 or 3 imprints, and each one of them is a different transparency, and you place them on the glass of this machine. what would you see on the screen above you? Because the screen is the reflection of what you see and how you see the world. And so it's muddled. You really have no clarity. Everything's distorted. Everything is mucked up, okay? So what we're doing is, as we are working to help these people clear these, not only the cellular memory, but also the adjoining and the attached imprints in each level, it's giving them the ability to see life more clearly, to become less victimized by life, to find ways to feel safe, to feel loved, to feel worthy of whatever it is. Because this is what happens to us. We literally get to the point where we're not who we were when we got here. You know, in a lot of cases, we're pretty messed up. So this allows us to clear all of this and maybe find some joy and feel like that little child, that little 2-year-old who's giggling. You know, we have lost that. And it's because of the experiences and how we perceive them. And so when we start to clear each one of these out one by one, we start to reimagine our life. And what's interesting is what he says is that not only are these filters, these imprints, the way we see ourselves or we see the world, but it's bidirectional, and it's also how other people see us, which is, to me, amazing. So what happens next if the person has gone and has learned, you know, has studied the basic and the intermediate, they may be ready to do the advanced. Now the advanced is a totally different class. It's an amazing process where it's all about soul's growth and soul's mission, and how do we find out what we're here to do, and how do we do it? How do we clear all of the obstacles, you know, that we feel we have in front of us to actually do it? Because it's frightening. When, you know, it's one thing to know what it is. It's another to actually walk the walk. Okay, I've been there, done it. So, and when you take the advanced class, you have you're going to experience the restructuring and balancing and expansion of part of the 4th pair, the 2nd strand, and the 5th pair of the DNA. Now, the 2nd strand of the is the genetic profile, which governs everything about your soul, of all the information, as far as what you're here to do, what kind of archetypal roles you're going to play. Are you going to be a leader, a warrior? Are you going to be a parent? Are you going to be a healer? Are you going to be, you know, whatever you came here? These are archetypes that we take on. And you can have more than one, obviously, throughout your life. But it also governs and contains the profile of all the experiences you need to have while you're here so that you can learn and grow. And it also knows the wisdom you need to develop through those lessons. And it also builds that spiritual strength for you to master over time. And it contains the information about the service you are to provide to others, because it's not all about just you learning. It's you about helping others too, because we're all teachers and we're all students here. I call this the Earth School, you know, and we're all teachers and we're all students, and everybody's sharing and everybody's helping each other. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way. I get that, but that's exactly, even I say this with all love. The person who challenges you the most to be kind, to be compassionate, is your best teacher. And I know that's hard for a lot of people to swallow, but it is true, because That's the only reason to have that experience, is to learn to see past that and have compassion and forgiveness. Because to me, people who are hurtful, people who do things that are hurtful, are people who are hurt. Okay, that's the reason why they hurt others. So, but they are teaching you regardless. And the other thing that this particular strand of DNA dictates is the path that we are to take to find that path back to our true self, to joy. So and we're going to talk about the fifth pair, which is, it governs the what they call the soul group. Okay, you know, before we were incarnated, we belong to the soul cluster, a group of souls that kind of share these lifetimes, and we interchange roles in each lifetime, who we're going to help, who we're going to work with, in what capacity, what gender, whatever. So that the fifth pair actually governs that and controls the timing of these meetings for each specific soul. And it helps us to seek and find each other out when it's time to do so for that soul's purpose. Because, you know, I'm sure you've had that experience. I mean, I think everybody probably has had it at some point, if they've been here long enough, is that you run into somebody you've never met before. You have this connection you can't explain. You feel like you sit down and you start talking with them, and the next thing you know, you feel as if you've known them forever, and it makes no sense. But you feel so comfortable, and the conversation is easy, and you just want to be around them. Well, that's because they're part of your group. All right, they're here to help you in some way, and they just showed up at the right time. Okay, so here you are, and you know, when we work with clients, normally I only work with, I start them with the intermediate session, which is working with, you know, the cellular memory and the imprints that are in their field, clearing them. Once they've gotten to a point where, you know, we've gotten this pretty much under control, if they're ready and they want to do it, I will then offer and take them through what we call an advanced session. And in the advanced sessions that I do, it's amazing because we're working with their soul, and they're helping them to discover what it is they're here to do. Because so many people walk around going, I don't know what, you know, is this all there is? Why am I here? I have no idea what life is about. You know, that kind of feeling. I've been there. We've all been there, I think, especially if you've been here at least 50 years. But, you know, this is where we're helping them. So, because that information is right there. It's literally in their energy field. It's just a matter of getting it to come out from, because it's literally in what they call the 8th chakra, which is about above the crown chakra, about 3 feet from the top of the head. And that has so much information, and it's located right in the spiritual layer field. So it makes total sense, because this is all, because that layer and that chakra all have to do about the soul. It's all the soul's information that it brought with it, whether it's karmic, whether it's, you know, just its mission, whether, you know, so basically we can do several different processes with the client to using things called a heart wave, a heart net, a soul star clearing. A soul star clearing is where we connect. I will sit at the 3 feet away from the client's head, and I will literally connect their soul star to my soul star, energizing it, helping them, and then using a heart wave, using the IET energy and sending it from my heart and in waves through them, through their energy field, to literally help assist this information to come down and be fully grounded into their physical body. And so that they can eventually, if it gets down to the arm areas, then they will be able to at least embrace what it is they're here to do. But then we have to clear the arms. The arms they hold the stuck energy of limitations, restrictions, and opposition. You know, this is our arms, okay? So if we clear that out, then they are able to embrace their soul's mission. So it's part of the process when we do an advanced session. And then we work on clearing the legs. The legs represent, you know, action or inaction, okay? And so the legs hold the suppressed energy of victimization and constriction. And so it's very important that we clear that. So once we clear the arms and legs, we can fully move this information, this energy, through this entire being so that they can ground it. And they can not just know it, embrace it, but they can enact it. They can walk in full knowing that they are following their path, so that a lot of the ego fears that are normal for most people can be put aside to a point. Okay, so we're about an hour in, are we not?
Yes, we are, and I guess I might as well. That was you are the, well, I would say you are the man, but you're not a man, so you're the lady. You are the, well, the shit. Being able to talk about that stuff without having me interrupt and me being able to sit back and listen to it and reflect and enjoy it and expand my consciousness. It's a rare gem to have someone like that on a show. And I've been accused many times, Andrew, let your guest speak. And well, okay, you could say that with any random guest, and I don't know which guests are more worthy to speak more than others. And frankly, I think the ones that are greenhorns that haven't been on the earth as long as like the other ones and haven't had their names become household names, they're the ones who, if anything, deserve to have more speaking time than the ones that everybody knows about, because their info's already out there. So, well, your info was greatly put out there. You did a very good job there. And, well, since we are at the hour point, I guess I'm going to hang up on you and then ask you to call me right back if you could do that, so I could ask you questions. And
Sure.
I don't think I need a full hour's worth of time to ask questions, but
Okay.
there are a few on my mind that I have. So without further ado, let me hang up and you call me back in about 30 seconds.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay, glad to be speaking to you again. You there?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Yes, for some reason my computer always seems to have the spinning icon turn up now, and I put all my past interviews on the show to thumb drives, and even that doesn't seem to be helping. I don't know what it is. My folks are going to be installing a computer that's 3 years ahead of the one that I have now when I'm in Orlando for the Libertarian Conference, so hopefully that will solve some problems. But of course, even in Mercury retrograde,
I know.
there's crazy things that happen. So, without further ado, I guess I'll get to the questions that I wanted to ask. And the first thing of all, gentle dove wellness. I can't help but ask, what is it about the dove that you love? I mean, the dove is always known as a symbol of love and peace, but then again, the Illuminati has twisted it, and the David Icke fans know about Columba. Is the I don't know what language it is. Maybe it's Latin or Spanish or whatever for the dove, and goes back to Christopher Columbus, who, contrary to what they teach us in elementary school, he was actually a despicable man who decided to kill off all the Indians, and was very abusive to his subordinates on his ships, and he didn't have the same soul. The pre-1492 Columbus had a different soul than the post-1492 Columbus. So says Akashic Records reader Andrew Bartzis. So he's an enigma in more ways than one, and that causes the dove symbol to be an enigma in more ways than one. So,
you know, it's funny how it even came to be. I remember in 2007, I was trying to create my business, and I spent almost an entire day just going through different names, you know, and you have to check the website's domains, and you have to check the state records, and you had to, like, everything I wanted wouldn't happen until I got to that. And it just felt right, because, and I didn't understand why. The dove has been very big in my life. It's like they keep showing up. And so I believe it's more of a totem for me. And it represents healing. It represents healing from grief. It represents being, kind to yourself. That's the dove is all about that. It's reminding us from the totem, the Native American totem, that, to heal and be gentle. And so it made sense when I looked that up, why that name was the only name that I could find to use. And and ever since then, I've found, things with doves on them, and it just always comes around. So that's where it comes from. That's where, I believe it was selected by spirit. I don't think I had anything to do with it, because I didn't understand the relevance of the dove at all back then. And then after a while, I happened to come across Animal Speaks, the book. And when I looked up, what that message is that this bird brings, it's beautiful. And it's so appropriate to what I do, because I'm all about helping others heal and helping myself heal. So I think it's appropriate.
Fair enough. I do have a universe translator on my phone. I was trying to download it now to upload to get the dove symbolism, but it's taking a while. There's Mercury retrograde glitches again, so maybe while I'm waiting for that, I'll get to some of the other things. I see you have a tab here, yoga, virus, flu, season tips. Now, I was taking yoga. I decided to go on a little bit of a yoga hiatus and also a Tai Chi and Aikido hiatus. I was taking those two martial arts as well, and I think I'm going to dedicate some of my time to learning the Jedi lightsaber arts. And yeah, I bought a lightsaber to learn how to do that, and I'm also going to be learning how to be an archer. I got a funny feeling that learning how to hit the bullseye on archery is going to help me get along with my father, who is a Sagittarius, and he and I didn't really get along very well. And he was a monkey in the Chinese zodiac, and I'm a tiger. They don't get along well. However, in Western astrology, the Sagittarius and the Aries are supposed to get along well. So I'm trying to throw a monkey wrench, if you will, no pun intended, into the monkey tiger thing in the Chinese zodiac by learning how to get along with the Sagittarius. And somehow, some way, I'm thinking buying an archery set and learning how to hit the bullseye is going to help me get along with my father. Call me crazy if you want, but that's what I've decided, and that's the sacrifice I'm making to get away from yoga for a little bit. And I plan to get back to yoga probably when the year of the tiger comes around in 2022 is probably going to be when I'm going to get back to yoga and all the other martial arts after I get on my hiatus. But you seem to have something to say about yoga, so I'm going to give you the chance to talk about it, and why, of all the things, virus and flu, why would you, I mean, if someone who's sick can certainly do yoga, but then again, would it be safe to do yoga in a place where everybody's sick? I mean, that's kind of a recipe for disaster, you would think, getting the airborne illness.
Well, that's why we've kind of put this up there, because people don't have to be with other people to practice yoga practices. I mean, they can do it from home. And what this is basically doing is trying to help people stay balanced, because the problem that everybody's having is because our whole routine has been so disrupted that we feel off balance. We're nothing is normal. So everything is different. And, that upsets people emotionally, because they get upset because they can't do this or they can't do that. And, the emotions take over. And once you get upset, your immune system is affected. Okay. So trying to stay emotionally balanced is very important when we are being exposed to any kind of flu, virus, whatever, so that our immune system can stay intact and do what it can do if it's healthy. And this is the thing even now with the COVID. If people would just, there's very little focus on the immune system health. The focus is on the vaccine. Well, there may or may not ever be a vaccine that works. And they've tried before when they did the last COVID, and it failed miserably. So it actually made it worse. They did a vaccine. I was just listening to this the other day, and then when they were doing the animal testing, it seemed like it was fine until they exposed the animals to the virus. When they exposed the animals to the virus, they had that cytokine storm. They had all of that. It was killing them. So they put that vaccine on the side because it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So, and I was listening to another doctor today on YouTube that was being interviewed by Del Heitre. Really amazing. The guy is into bioenergy medicine, and he was talking about T cells and your immune system. And I thought, this is really where we should be having the conversations, about health, is that, making sure the body gets everything it needs, making sure we stay emotionally healthy and balanced, and our immune system can fight off just about anything. It's what it's designed to do if we give the body and our minds and our emotions what we need. And that's, I've known that so long now that ever since when I got into Reiki, I started balancing, I started clearing, and it was like the Reiki itself was doing it, was helping me with all of that. And it was the strangest thing, because I would look at pictures of myself prior in my mid 40s, and then I saw pictures of me after, like a year or two after I started practicing Reiki. I actually looked younger. There was a glow. Okay, so it was, because of the fact that I was more in homeostasis. This energy helped me to regain my health. It cleared out the negativity. I was releasing baggage, emotional baggage, which was I had been carrying my whole life and didn't, when we go through life, we get all this baggage and we don't even know we're carrying it anymore because we've carried it so long, it's normal. Okay? But once we release it, once it's gone, it's like this light bulb goes on, like, oh my God, is that the way I'm supposed to feel? And I had that experience. And it's we don't realize how much we're holding inside, how much it's making us ill. Because every time we have these negative experiences, it's affecting our immune system. And if we don't let it go, we don't release it, we're on the track for a disease in some way. The body will respond because, it can't function normally when the immune system isn't functioning right. Plus, if you have blockages in your energy, the energy is not flowing properly to all of the organs and all, going through the meridians and getting and feeding the energy that needs to go. So it's already set up for a problem. And just add the fact that you are so out of whack that your immune system's not working properly. It's a recipe for disaster. But we have not been taught as a society. We just haven't been taught how to take care of ourselves. Don't you agree?
Yes, I do. And one thing that people will agree to disagree on for a long time, of course, is whether or not chakras are worth getting involved with. Again, I'm going to pick on George Kavaslis. I can't help but pick on him because he's the guy who causes a lot of uproar with his claim that we don't have to focus on the chakras. I mean, they are real, they exist, and they have a purpose, but he asserts that in the end, they're just a brainwashing thing to keep you from getting to your true heart soul essence. And he says if you just go with the heart soul essence that he does all the time, you can't go wrong. And my criticism of that is, well, if you can do that and always have fun and not get bored going with the heart, well, more power to you. but I think you're missing out on all the fun, not getting all the other chakras involved. And I mean, why not try to get all the other chakras involved? Isn't it worthwhile to learn how to do these things? I mean, just because one could make the argument that focusing too much on the way the third dimension of consciousness works will keep you trapped in the third dimension. But then again, you still have to learn how the third dimension works in order to be able to get through it. So,
We are we are a multifaceted being. I mean, it just sounds like he's a little bit in denial, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't know anything about him, so I don't want to speak ill or anything. But the chakras are basically how we take the energy in. You know, it's the doorway. Okay, so if that energy can't get through because the chakra is blocked, this is where, you know, and then you're starving that part of the body of the energy it needs. It's life force energy that it needs. Of course you're going to have a problem, because it's just like your blood. If your blood is blocked in a certain, maybe in your arm, and it's affecting your hand, okay, because the blood flow is not there to feed the cells and the bones and all, it's going to be diseased. You're going to have a problem. Same thing with your energy. So I don't quite understand his thinking or philosophy. I don't know anything about it. But to me, to say that you shouldn't be concerned about your chakras seems a little naive. They are real. They're non-physical, obviously, but they are real. Just because you can't see, feel, or touch it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, and that it's not important. It is important. It's part of your, I mean, our energy body, we have an energy anatomy, and that is the most vital part. And then, you know, obviously the energy goes through your chakras, through your meridians, through your nadis, feeds everything in our body, every cell. And the moment you have a blockage somewhere, you're going to have an issue, a symptom. Something's going to happen to let you know something is wrong. That's, to me, it boggles my mind that somebody would say that they're inconsequential. But we all have our belief systems. So
yes, we do. And when it comes to the empath skills workshop, I see that's another thing. And empaths, so many empaths suffer because, well, they're empaths. They're designed to take on the negative feelings of others, which isn't a bad thing. If you're trying to raise the vibrational frequency of the earth, you want to try to solve all the weak links, and the weak links are the people that are suffering. And if you're going to take away the weak link and learn how to accept the pain for it, and you can overcome that pain eventually, then, well, that's a good thing. But I mean, some people are better at it than others. There is this guy who I'm going to be going to a conference in Detroit. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but he claims he has the ability to just sit there and have people all around him bombard him with all their negative karma and negative energy, and he claims he will absorb it on their behalf. And it kind of makes you wonder, what does he have that other empaths don't have that doesn't cause him to suffer as much as others if they were to try to do the same things? So
well, there's some interesting things, and I've experienced some interesting things. I am an empath. What happens is, well, the empath, being an empath is really helpful in a way, because then you can get what's going on with someone to help them, you know, with regard to their healing. But I have had, and I still to this day don't understand it. I don't know how it works. I have an idea, but I really, truly don't. I never intended it to happen, but it's happened to me on several occasions where I will be in proximity to someone, usually somebody I care about, and they're going through something very painful. Okay. In the one case, it was a good friend who was taking a stroke. In this case, it was her second stroke. I was sitting in her living room with her sister, and it didn't hit me right away. She was in process, she grabbed her head and started to say she needs to go to the hospital. So, you know, I got them in my car and started driving to the hospital, to the emergency room. As soon as I got in the car, got everybody in, I felt this incredible pain in my head. I mean, I had never felt anything like it. And I had migraine, so I know what really bad headaches feel like. But it was so devastating. I was white knuckling. Thank God it was dark. They couldn't see me. I was driving, pulled up into the parking lot, dropped them off at the front door. Said, all right, I'll meet you in there. I'm going to park the car. So I parked the car, and I'm sitting in the car trying to pull it together. Okay. I don't know what I'm feeling and why at this moment, but I just thought the only thing I can do is see if I can move it out using my mind. And so I sat there in the car, and I'm just trying to move it out. It eased a little bit, but not a whole lot at that moment. So, but it was enough for me to get out of the car and walk into the waiting area where her sister was sitting. And when I walked in, she just looked at me. Now, I'm a very pale skinned person. I am a redhead, you know. So my complexion is rather very fair. But I was probably stone white, okay? She looked at me and she just went, "Are you okay?" And I went, "Yeah, I'll be okay." I sat down and it was very interesting because as I sat down, I was only there for a few moments. The pain started to go away, left me as fast as it came. And in that moment, the nurse comes out from behind and comes into the waiting area to tell us that she's okay. We could go back and see her. And that was the first time that I had that experience. And I didn't quite understand it. And until a little while later, when I was running my business, one of my employees came in and she was in exasperating pain with her back, her lower back. She was dragging her one foot. She was in such pain. And I was very busy. Normally I would have tried to give her Reiki or something, but I didn't have time because I had to be somewhere and I was, late trying to get to this appointment. And so I put my briefcase together. I left the building, went into my car, which is parked right outside. And as soon as I sat in the car, as soon as I sat down, this pain just shot through my back. I was just like, oh my God. And I had no pain in my back prior to that. So I just picked up my cell phone at that moment. I dialed the office, and I asked her, I said, okay, is this what your back pain feels like? And I explained what I was feeling. And her response was, I'm so sorry, because she knew I'm an empath, okay? So I said, no, it's okay. I just want to make sure it's not mine, that I didn't do something. So I hung up the phone. So I just sat in my car for about 45 seconds. And I have this way I can take, using my mind, moving the pain literally out and down through my legs and my feet into the earth. It was gone. And so what was interesting, that in both cases, and I didn't realize till later with my friend with the stroke, because it took a while to realize that it was the same, but in both cases, they were much better. The next day, they were much better. Matter of fact, my friend didn't even have any neurological deficit after a bleed. So how it happens, I have no idea. This isn't something I was ever taught to do. I've never read about it. It just happened. So yeah, I don't know about this guy, but I mean, I know what I've experienced. So, what I've really come to understand is we have so many abilities that we do not tap. I had somebody pressure me one time to, there are people that can remotely view somebody inside their body, a medical intuitive. Okay, I'm sure you've heard of them. I was kind of pushed to do that one time, and I didn't believe I could. So I kept telling them I can't do that. But they wouldn't stop badgering me. And so at one point I stopped fighting it. And I went, just to humor them, I just went, okay, fine, you know. And I closed my eyes and literally I saw it. I mean, I could see the black spot on the heart. I could see exactly where it was on the heart. And I told the person, get to the hospital now, you're having a heart attack. Okay, and this is where the damage is. But I've never done it again. I didn't want to do it. Okay, so I think we all have amazing gifts. I think if we were, push comes to shove, I think, but we block these things. We don't, you know, it's just too much. So we say, no, I don't want to do that. But I think we all can. How's that?
Yes, we all have that ability, and we all have the ability to learn it, although certain people can learn it faster than others. When it comes to learning Reiki, I mean, I've always asked the question whenever I have someone who talks about it, who does Reiki on my show, I ask them, can you learn it on your own, or do you need lessons? And, well, the analogy that I've often used to describe how hard it can be in this matrix to learn things, there was a time where I tore off a teeny tiny itsy bitsy piece of paper, like a couple millimeters across, off a big sheet of paper. I put it on a table, the little itsy bitsy piece of paper, and tried telekinesis using telekinetic powers to move it. And after trying for hours upon end, after X amount of weeks, I wasn't able to move that paper, and I decided, you know what, screw this. I got more important things to do in my life, not worth doing it. I mean, Yoda, he has the ability to bring Luke Skywalker's ship out of the bog and make Luke look bad when Luke said it's different from moving rocks.
Well,
And
you know, even though you were trying really hard, I will bet you it's some part of your brain you didn't believe you could do it.
really, okay, well, how is that does that make any sense when I know it's possible? If
Yeah, but if you
really,
don't believe it in your subconscious mind, if you don't believe it, it's not, you don't know what you believe. It's in your subconscious mind. So if you really don't believe you can do something, you can't do it. Like I say, I tell my students all the time, whatever you believe, you're right. Doesn't matter what it is. Whatever you believe, you're right. Because the law of the universe will prove it to you that you were right. Okay? So, and you don't know what your belief systems are that you've accumulated over, you know, decades of living. They're hidden from us. So until it pops up into your consciousness, and then you can clear it. But until it comes up, you can't clear it because you don't know it's there. But yeah, it's really, it comes down to, I think, that what you believe. And you don't know what you believe because it's not conscious.
well, yeah, that's what when Luke said, I don't believe it, when he saw Yoda do that, and Yoda said, that's why you failed.
That's the story. That's what they're telling us. He didn't believe he could do it. That's why he couldn't do it. That's why Yoda says, do, what he says, no try, do, or something like that. I remember that.
Yeah, do it or not, there is no try.
There's no try. That's
yes.
right.
Yes, and I've bought a lightsaber off ultrasabers.com to learn how to do the moves of the Jedi, or the Jedi, as they were in ancient Egypt. There was a D before the J in the class in Egypt that was known as the Jedi, which is based on what George Lucas based that on. But of course, there was the Star Wars based on the Orion Wars, which did happen a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there was a lightsaber etiquette of sorts, and I'm going to try to learn that with my toy lightsaber. But anyhow, moving on to some other things here that we can talk about here. Dowsing, yeah, do a dowsing workshop. So when you're walking down the road with those dowsing rods and they move all of a sudden, you think something is there's got to be something that caused it to move, and but then you don't know what it was that caused it. So how do you make sense of how is
Well,
one's?
that's not quite how you use rods. You're talking about the L rods, right?
Yeah, is this
There's
different?
many different dowsing tools. So the L rods are used for a certain purpose. They're used for direction. They're used for um, locating things. I've used them to find underwater sprinkler systems, the pipes, because something will leak and you don't know where the pipe is anymore and you got to dig it up. So I've done that, and you just simply, you set your intention, okay? But you have to, with dowsing's interesting because the American Dowsing Association, which is in Vermont, they put out a thing called Letter to Robin, which is basically a response to this girl, Robin, who wrote, she was having so much trouble with her dowsing, she was asking for help, and they wrote this, it turned into like a little booklet, but it was a letter to her how to be more accurate, because accuracy is everything in dowsing. And one of the things people don't understand is that you have to be in the right frame of mind. You have to not want a certain answer. You can't be predisposed to wanting a certain answer. You have to be neutral. So there's three questions that you always ask before you begin any dowsing for anything is, may I, should I, or could I, or can I, excuse me. And if you get a yes on those three questions, then you're okay to go ahead and douse. Otherwise, what happens is you get false information. It doesn't come through clear. Your accuracy is going to be awful, because what can happen is you could have been just going through something and you're still emotionally a little upset. There's no neutrality there. You maybe want a certain answer because you're connected to, you're attached to that answer. I developed my own blind dowsing system for that scenario, where I just take like flashcards, turn them upside down with different answers, and I spread them out like in a semicircle, and I use my pendulum. I don't know what answers are behind what cards, so I can't influence the answer, okay? Because we can easily influence the answer if we have the desire to do so. So it's a matter, dowsing is a very interesting art form. It's been practiced since they know as far back as the Egyptians. It probably goes further back. It's an amazing art form, that because I had to figure this out on my own. I thought to myself, because I'm a very left brain logical linear thinker as by rule, okay? So I'm thinking, well, how is this actually working? And what I've come up with is that the tool you're using is just a device to give you the ultimate answer, but your body is connected to this, and your subconscious mind and your higher consciousness. So you're asking the universe for an answer, or your higher self, whatever you want to call that, because the higher self is connected to all the collective. So all that information is available. The other part of that is, and that's why we ask the should I, is because sometimes you're not really supposed to know that answer because it's going to interfere with what you're to learn or what you to experience through a certain situation. So that's why we ask these questions. So what I feel is that we're sitting there either with the L rods or with a pendulum or the bobber, whatever tool it is we're comfortable with working with, and we're connecting. We're connecting to our higher self. We're asking, may I, should I, can I? Okay, we get the yeses. We are then putting the question out that for the answer that we're looking for. The other part of dowsing is that the question is everything. People don't realize how ambiguous their questions are, or they'll make it multi-part. And see, when you're asking the question, you're asking it, it's going through the subconscious mind, and the subconscious is very literal, very literal. So you have to keep it very simple. Like, for instance, they give a good example. They said, the man has a car. He just fills up his gas tank with gasoline, right? Then he douses to ask whether his car needs gas. It says yes. Is it right? Would you say that's a right answer?
Well, depending on the dowsing rod.
No, listen to this. Because, see, the word gas, that's a very ambiguous word. He didn't ask gasoline. He said gas.
Gas. Okay.
Oxygen, air is a gas.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So the car always needs gas.
Okay.
Okay? See, that's how literal it is. And so people get all twisted up in the question. They don't understand why it goes awry. And then if they're, there's all these things that it's a skill, and you have to practice it, and you have to understand it. So that's why I teach it, because most people just pick up, they'll go to a metaphysical store, they'll pick up a pendulum, and nobody's ever taught them how to use it. And then they start trying to use it, and they don't understand why, they're getting bad information, and then they give up. So it's all about really understanding. And they also have you do, and it's in their book, what they call a subconscious programming, where you read off what it is. It's an agreement that you're making with your subconscious mind that this means this means that, so that there's a program for the dowsing. And that improves your accuracy, because you're being clearly defining what these things are and what it means with your own subconscious. So it's a little involved. People think it's no big deal. Well, and to get it right, because nobody's 100% accurate, but you want to improve that accuracy to more like 70 or 80%, instead of 10 or 20, but it's amazing. I've used it for everything and anything. I mean, you can use it to figure out what vitamins are the best for you, how much, because everybody's body is different. So you can actually find out how many milligrams of this vitamin you need. You can, for your body at this point. You can douse for all of this stuff for your health, and whether it's food you eat, or whether it's, the exercise routine that you're going to do, what's going to be most beneficial. You can douse, because you're literally finding this out from your higher self, which has all the information you need. That's dowsing.
You say the higher self has all the information you need. That raises an interesting question about like the chakras, and getting back to what I said about George Kavasilis and how he says just go with the heart, you can't go wrong. And well, when it comes to accessing the Akashic records, Andrew Bartz is the Akashic Records reader, who is probably my #1 source of information, and George Kavasilis was probably #2 on that list on this show.
Right.
Andrew Bartz says that the crown chakra plays a very significant role in his ability to access the Akashic records to answer any question under the sun. Well, George Kavasilis has shown on multiple occasions that going with the heart all the time does not enable him to answer every single question under the sun that you were to ask. So if you want to be a know-it-all, one would make the argument that, okay, you got to go with the crown chakra and not the heart chakra. So, but am I looking at this the wrong way?
No, well, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. The heart chakra, to me, is like almost the seat of the soul, okay? Because that's the language of the soul always comes through the heart, okay? But the crown chakra is so important because it is how we connect. Our soul connects to everything, to the collective consciousness, to everything. I mean, it's with that, if we close that chakra down, this is what causes a lot of loneliness, sadness. It's because we feel so cut off, and we don't feel connected, and literally we're not. What's interesting in IET, we have discovered that at the crown, what gets suppressed there? What energy? The emotional energy of guilt. Okay. So does that make sense? To me, it makes total sense, because when we feel we are guilty of something that we've done, said, whatever, we don't feel worthy of that connection, right? When we release the guilt, we can then reopen and connect.
Yes, releasing guilt is key, and also forgiving is
Yeah.
key. And that also, just out of curiosity, are you the kind of person that would seek justice or not seek justice because you see justice as glorified revenge?
That's an interesting question to ask a Libran. Uh,
George Kavaslis would say justice is glorified revenge, so I
yeah,
don't
justice,
seek it.
see,
But
there's all kinds of justice, though. I mean, if you're talking about legal justice and you're talking, what I mean, there's, I don't believe so much in justice. I just feel as if at this point in my life, that, I still do believe what comes around goes around. You know, uh, it's God's will, and whatever happens is going to happen. And karmically, I feel bad for the person, because it's like karmically they've just created a situation that they're going to have to balance out at some point, whether it's this life, next life. So there's always justice, but it's a different kind of justice. It's so they learn. It's all because the thing that people seem to tend to forget is that we are all spiritual beings just having this experience in this physical body, and that we're all here to learn, and we're all here to grow. And yeah, it's awful at times. The Earth School is one of the hardest things to get through, but really, when we start looking at each other in that way, instead of just at the human level where we have all these human emotions and we are, we want revenge and anger, and it's all ego based. We forget how to balance. We're trying to learn how to balance ego with spirit and be both. But we're not real good at it at times. People get lost in the sauce. Fear is a very strong emotion, and it tends to override all the others. So and that's what's happening now. Everyone is so fearful. They're worried about everything, and they can't even think straight. People are attacking each other verbally, physically. It's gotten out of control. And we have to really just understand that, in spirit, there is none of this. And, that when we go back, we're going to look at this and go, holy cow. But there's learning going on. There's definitely growth, but it's a hard way to learn. You can learn through ease, but you can learn through challenge too. And it's really up to us how we learn. The universe doesn't care how we learn, as long as we learn and we grow. And that's the bottom line. But it's, when I first kind of came to this understanding, I remember my response to myself, my ego self, was, what the hell was I thinking? That I gave myself all this to deal with, because when we're not in body, it's very easy to take on a lot of challenges in our lives. In this lifetime now, when I look at somebody who is disabled, who is in a wheelchair, or who is suffering, I see a very brave soul. I see a soul that has chosen a path that is very difficult. And I have the utmost respect and love for them, because they're here teaching people, but they have to go through this. And, that's just the way I look at things now. I look at things totally different than I did before I was 50. And like I said, it just flipped my whole world upside down when I started to understand the nature of reality, okay, that we actually are living in.
well, nobody has a tougher time understanding the nature of reality than I, and which is the reason why I am the host of a show called Nature of Reality Radio, naturally. So many things to learn, so many more people to interview as we go along. But what else could I ask you about before we bring this show to a close? Well, people have lousy attention spans, so maybe it wouldn't be in my best interest to do 2-hour shows all the time. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to get out regarding your work that you maybe haven't touched on, and any future things that you're planning to do, and anything else like that? Anything you'd like to get out?
Well, we're talking about doing a 4-week clinic here. The yoga therapist is going to be doing for people, helping them overcome anxiety from the traumas that they've experienced. It's very interesting work. It's going to be a 3-hour session per, it's like every other week, on a Sunday afternoon. So it's really going to be, it gives you time to process in between. So she's awesome. She's done a lot of training just to help people with trauma. And that's really what we're about here. I mean, it's helping people heal. And trauma is such a big part of most people's healing, that we focus on that here. All the yoga we do is not your, 22, year old that's doing the fast flow. We're not into that. What I'm into is helping people to regain mobility, balance, to help themselves reconnect to themselves, to heal from whatever it is they need to heal. So I brought in the yoga teachers because I felt that was a good adjunct to what I do at the energy level with the energy medicine. So that's basically what the center is about, is just to help people move past all those things so that they can have a better life, that they can enjoy life, that they can let go of the emotional baggage, and that they can find happiness and joy in their life again, and just be thankful for their life. And that's it.
Yes, I wish you the best of luck with that, and I encourage you not to let this global civilization shutdown that's going on ruin your ability to get the word out to people. If it has to be over the computer, over the net, so be it. But I do encourage people out there, don't be afraid to open up your business. Your government does not have the authority to keep you shut down because you created the government. The people created the government. We can decide when we can run our businesses, and we only ask the government to regulate the businesses in the event that some contracts are breached. But that's a whole other can of worms. I'm not going to.
Yeah, we know that. Well,
Yeah,
we just went to green. We're going to green next Friday, so things are going to start opening up a lot. And it all comes down to, no matter what the government says, even if the government were to say, everything go back to normal, I feel that people are so frightened now. They've been so, kind of almost brainwashed to be frightened, that it's going to take a while for people to trust and come in the door, because they're so programmed. So we're going to be doing some deprogramming with people, so they feel comfortable enough to come in and get on a session table or to do a yoga practice. It's going to take some time. I am quite aware of that, but I'm here for the long haul. This is my heart and soul, and I will keep this going no matter what. So.
And I'll keep this show going no matter what. So pleasure having you on. I will upload this to YouTube and cause.tv by midnight tomorrow at the episode latest. I'll send you the links when I do. And of course, all my listeners, I might as well get this, say this on a regular basis at the end of the shows. Please do listen to the YouTube, but only for maybe 15 seconds or so, just to get a view count up. I encourage you to listen to the interviews on cost.tv so I can make a profit out of this because YouTube has demonetized me. So, and it won't be until Independence Day when I can ask for that again, but I have a feeling they're not going to honor that because it took forever for them to finally honor it again. And it was a miracle they actually did, but they shut me down again, and they were toying with me, obviously, because I actually said the dreaded CV word in one of my recent interviews, and they actually said your video is okay to upload. I was like, you got to be kidding me. I thought you wouldn't allow this because well, the next thing I knew, they banned me. So screw with you in the most ridiculous ways. But that being said, it was a pleasure having you on. Kudos to Daniel Teague again for recommending you. And sorry about the fact that I double booked, and apologies to the other guy who thought I was going to interview him. Now I'm going to have to get to him in a little bit. But thank you, pleasure, take care, namaste, enjoy the rest of your trek throughout infinite consciousness, Linda.
Thank you. You take care.